Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast, celebrating filmmaking, storytelling and cinema across the island of Ireland. So for today's episode, we are delighted to welcome four very talented filmmakers who'll be screening their work at Imbolg, Women Who Terrify Horror Film Festival. They'll be introducing themselves and their wonderful films very shortly, so hang on for that. But first, a little bit about the festival. Imbolg takes place from the 30th to the 31st of January in partnership with ourselves and Griffith College Dublin. The lineup consists of 3 excellent shorts programmes, an audiovisual presentation from Faoin Talamh, the Goth Film Club, the Irish Network for Gothic and Horror Film Studies. Then we'll be in conversation with New York filmmaker Laura Moss about their really impressive career to date. After that, then we'll close with a free screening of their iconic reanimation horror Birth, Rebirth. So just go on to Eventbrite now and you can get tickets for all of the above. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming in for this very exciting panel. I was wondering if I could go around and ask everybody to introduce themselves and give a one-liner description about your film and your film title, if that's okay. So I'll start with you, Marjo.
My name is Marjo Viitala, and I'm a film director from Finland. And my film, I Remember You, is about a group of young friends who go camping on the beach. And strange things start happening there. Yeah, and the local man disappears.
Very, very interesting and very, very spooky as well. And Vanessa.
My name is Vanessa, obviously, and I am based in Dublin. And my film is On Leaving You. It's very different to the other women's filmmakers here. It's an experimental film, a very personal experimental film, but it kind of interrogates our complicity, our innate complicity in, I suppose, the horrors and atrocities that are taking place. I'll go into it more maybe if people want a bit of context, but yeah, it's, like all experimental films, it's obsessed with time, place, memory, all those things. Yeah.
And Nadia.
I'm Nadia. I'm from Long Island, New York. This is my first time writing, shooting, directing a short film. And in the season thereof is about a boy, Mark, who moves from Utah and leaves the Mormon church to move to a new town his senior year. And he kind of struggles to navigate this like obsessive love for this girl, and he starts getting these kind of visions that are inflicted by his religious upbringing and his trauma. And so he's navigating that conflict between like this obsessive love and his religious trauma.
And Max.
Yes, I'm Margaret Kane-Rowe, and I'm a writer-director, and I'm based in Kildare in Ireland. And my film is called ShadowFable, and it originally was, the intention behind it was a proof of concept, which was to stress test kind of tone and VFX. So that was kind of where it came from, and it really is just kind of trying to figure out where emotionally I wanted it to land and to get that first. And it's sort of creature feature meets folk horror, kind of.
And am I allowed to say, is it something of a little spec for a longer form project?
It is indeed, yeah. It's a longer form, which is which falls into that space of really kind of it brings a bit of our history into things in a way that just kind of brings it into the present as well, sort of marries the two together. Yeah. So I know that's very abstract, but yes, it is. It's a proof of concept for a larger project I'm developing at the moment. Yeah.
Tell me where the idea for ShadowFable came from and how it fits into that bigger project as a whole.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of, the main character is a young archivist who is living in Dublin, and she is homeless. She's been rendered homeless, and it's kind of, it speaks to that, I see it with my own children, and they do the right thing. They go to college, they get a master's, they do all the things they're supposed to do, and yet they're kind of in a situation where they have no stability or certainty around kind of, just the basic things, a right to a roof over their heads. So it kind of, that's her situation, that's her dilemma. And then she's sent to do field research in what we have in Ireland. We used to have county nursing homes or county homes, which were kind of like the hospitals in each county. But prior to that, a lot of them would have their reference or they would have the history behind them they originally would have been workhouses. So then they became, after we became independent, they became kind of nursing homes, or hospitals, county hospitals, and then they are now, a lot of them are still, they're the edifice of many of the kind of buildings that we use are the hospital in Naas, for example, or there's a nursing home, a really nice nursing home in Athy, St. Vincent's Hospital, which used to be the workhouse. So she goes to interview one of these residents who's been moved into an updated kind of residence, and she's telling her folklore stories because she needs to record them, and she tells her about something that then is awoken and comes into being. So that's kind of the story. Yeah.
Oh, I love that with that it's so tangible, because it, like, that kind of the snippet that we get in this in the short film, it's very heightened. It's that very intense moment, but really works as an examination of tension and performance and effects.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it was interesting. The one thing I was certain about when I was doing it, and I was really we put a narrative around it, just kind of because I felt I just couldn't practically explore any of those things without there being some kind of a beginning, middle, and end. It wasn't really, that kind of, it was more of a feeling, is that I wanted it shot during the day, because in my head, it's kind of like daylight horror. But I did notice that every single one of our films happens during daylight hours, which is interesting because horror is often associated with what goes, bump in the night, and like everybody's afraid, like my character walks down a lonely pathway, but everybody's afraid to walk down an alleyway, male or female, because you don't know, you can't see around you, you can only see the end and you can't look behind you. So you don't know where anything's going to come from. Whereas sometimes it's the things that happen right in front of us that are even more terrifying and more scary. And I think probably, and I don't mean to make sweeping generalizations, but I think in general, women tend to be more sensitive to that reality, because we just seem more, we whether we want to or not, we can feel more vulnerable in situations that might seem safe to somebody else. And I just thought that was interesting. Everybody shot kind of pretty much during the day.
And it definitely has nothing to do with the fact that it's much, much cheaper and easier.
Oh, God, no.
Nothing. Never. It is 100% a stylistic choice, and not at all that we are impoverished independent filmmakers.
Yeah, well, that doesn't impact on it. But I just thought as a choice, it was really interesting. Every single one of us did it, that's all.
But it does, I think thematically that links us very well back to Nadia now to talk about the inception of your film. A very impressive student film, I must say. Probably one of my most impressive. So I was just wondering if you could tell me about how the idea came to you and your process developing it as a piece of text before going into production.
Mm-hmm. So I actually started with the ending monologue. So it was just a monologue. And then I kind of built the narrative around that and kind of what leads up to the Mark's monologue at the end. And I kind of thought about because I shot it in my hometown, so I wanted to use the locations that were accessible to me, and my friends were helping with the cast, and I taught them how to do lighting and set dressing and wardrobe, that type of stuff. And I really wanted to kind of explore, we have like a local church, and so that's how I did the shots of the cross. And it was a lot of the makeup and the lighting effects to get that kind of scary look for Anna in the visions.
And it does tap into something, about religious trauma, misogyny as well, that obsession, the entitlement, dealing with something and doing it so skillfully, that's so heavy. Where do you sort of get your inspiration from? Is it something that goes from the gut? Are you researching it?
Yeah, so I chose Mormonism because I did a little research, and they have really strict boundaries and regulations that they're kind of like built into. Like they don't even call like coffee table coffee because you're not supposed to drink caffeine. And I grew up Roman Catholic, and so a lot of people kind of talk about Catholic guilt and kind of like moral OCD, always having like feeling watched and having this feeling that you have to do everything morally good and morally just, really monitoring your behavior. And so I really want to explore that and how that kind of complicates a relationship with intimacy when you're kind of brought up not kind of being wary of like physical touch and like romantic relationships. And so those visions are often sparked when Mark and Anna's hands touch or they get into intimate positions.
Interesting and very powerful and very kind of tactfully done as well. As you're getting ready to go into production, are you writing this to like you're going to film it, or like from the get-go, from when you started to kind of like develop the idea, or were you only kind of confident that it was a whole thing after you'd done a bit of writing and development on it first?
I definitely knew I wanted to create a film. It was just kind of getting everything together. And I did some research. I watched some YouTube videos. I originally planned to just shoot with my iPhone, but my friend had an old Canon. And then I watched some YouTube tutorials and figured out how the Canon worked. I ended up storyboarding every single shot on index cards because I'd never shot a film before. So I wanted to kind of make sure I had a really strict game plan going in. And when I found out more people were interested in being a part of the project, then after I fully developed the script and got a team together, I realized I could actually make this production work.
And incredible work. Now, this brings us on to something that's slightly more different in form, but you can feel the weight of it. And I think you, Vanessa, if that's okay, sort of mentioned, like, to give context, because I think going in blind to something like this, it's such a kind of tactile, immersive experience. But I'm very interested to how you build something like this.
I mean, Jem, I know that, we know each other a long time, but like I've been making films for almost 25 years, very traditional ones, traditional style, particularly in drama and in documentary as a writer, director, and also as a producer. But I have been developing some of my own experimental practice in the last kind of like 10 years loosely, but I'm really engaging with it now. It comes from a place of being fairly disillusioned with the industry after that amount of time, and also loving the form, loving cinema. It's my life. Like it's my true love. So I made this film in Berlin in May as part of a week-long immersive personal experimental filmmaking course with the legendary Rusba Rashidi, who runs the Experimental Film School and the Experimental Film Society. He ran that from Dublin for 20 years. So just in some ways, the film is entirely shot on my phone, which, for me, like, the last film I shot that I made was on the Arri Alexa with prime lenses. That's the discipline and craft that I come from. So this is a massive departure. Even my previous experimental film were shot, using pinhole cinematography and experimenting, but huge crews. So this was just me, my phone, and my own sound recording, little tiny cheap microphones. So from that space, it's about leaving aside what the film is about, but just even the making of. I have my own equipment. I have access to lenses. I have access to everything I need. But for me, it was kind of about breaking away from the reliance on creating beautiful images, and the kind of that, of course, I adore that. I adore doing that, but kind of breaking down cinema to its rawest form and what is cinema. And so that was part of the course. So all the effects are in camera. So everything you see, I did, every color is created. There's no grading, there's no sound mix. I mean, there's a tiny bit of a mix, but just me mixing, so there's no color grading. So everything you see, I created with my iPhone with no effects whatsoever. And I'm not an editor, but like I edited it myself. And thematically on Leaving You, I'm not actually leaving anyone except for myself, my old self. And I suppose the reason it's got this, I think the reason it's in this festival, or the reason I even submitted it, is because on the day I arrived in Berlin was the day that a family in Gaza whose mother and father were doctors. 9 of their 10 children were killed in one bomb. But I was also in Berlin, where we were walking around the streets. What do they call it? Psychogeographic walking or something, is it? And so, I was like looking at all of these brass plates on the streets in Berlin where, on this day in 1942, 18 children were taken from this school and ended up in Auschwitz and were killed. So the two things were coming at me at the one time, the two states of horror, living horror. So, and then I was thinking, well, am I not as guilty of murdering these children as anyone, as the IDF, because I'm doing nothing about it. So that kind of inspired, and I think that's where the screaming horror element of it maybe comes out. It's not horror like Margaret or Nadia or Marjo are dealing with the more traditional genre that they're inspired by, not that their work in any way. It's all really fresh and new, and I loved watching their films. But I think that that's maybe where my film fits, if it does. I mean, I'm quite aware that it's not easy to penetrate experimental work at times, but I think the most important thing is you're not, I can't remember who said it, but really, a really great filmmaker. Was it Bresson said, understanding film or art is overrated. Sometimes you are just supposed to feel and see, and we don't try to understand abstract art. And then I also pulled in some personal archive. So where you see the shadow of the person, that's Rusba watching into footage from an old film of mine, and obviously the footage of my dog, and the snow was just little things I'd captured on my phone that I brought into the film because they were leaving certain things behind. So yeah, if any of that makes sense. Just to me. And the only other thing I'd say, Gemma, is that it is probably the most honest thing I've ever done. The most honest, true and real thing that I've ever done. And it's the most lo-fi, least craft, least crew, but it has been liberating for me to make films this way. And a lot of that has to do with our work in women in film and television, how women are treated in the industry, what I've experienced in the industry, the opportunities that others have been afforded that we haven't. So to be able to take control of my filmmaking in this way is one of the greatest joys of my life, for sure. And I think people would be surprised if they know me to see a film like this come from me, but we all have a dark side.
So Marjo.
Well, this story came about through a screenwriting workshop I led for teenagers, and where I promised that we would make an actual film in the end. Big promise, and we didn't have any money. I had money for to make this workshop, but not for the film. So that was done. Well, that's a production part already, but that was made without money. And why horror? I developed the story with this group of young people, young teenagers. So the actors in this film are also writers, or I wrote the script, but we developed the story together. And since I needed to change the story because of everything was falling apart because we didn't have money and so on. So I needed to rewrite and so on. So anyhow, they do a horrible thing in this film. These young people. I see, even though that there is this kind of fantasy part in the film and so on, it was it was reflecting to a real-time story that just maybe 1 year ago or something like that, there was a horrible thing in Finland what happened. So there was a group of boys who actually murdered their friend. And so I kind of like started to think like that this is actually what we are doing here. We are actually investigating like how these kind of things may happen. That like how people justify evil. And yeah, and this is the like idea behind the film at this moment in this world. So it's very in this time, reflects this time, I think.
Yeah, that it's so weighty. And I think actually Vanessa touched on this. So I would like, although I would like to keep it sort of in the present and on your work, is actually everybody just to give me a brief background of your own experience in the film industry so far as well. So Marjo, if I'll stay on you.
I made my master's of art in Stockholm, actually.
And Margaret.
So I suppose it's been about 10 years, I suppose I've been kind of writing. I started off as a writer and primarily a writer. And I suppose it's in the last 5 years or so that I've really tried to lean into it and see whether or not I can, get any purchase or make a career out of it. And because I do love it. I love storytelling in all forms. And I think for me, where it's become, funnily enough, and I don't think there's very little positive things to say about COVID, but for me as a mum, I had 2 kids and my husband was working long hours. What it created was a situation where I could actually network because everything went online. Because up until that point, if you wanted to go anywhere, you had to physically arrive. And it was difficult because, I live in Kildare and it's not that far away, but it's far enough away, for it to matter if you have to think in terms of babysitting and, getting out on a Tuesday night to Dublin or whatever. So that's kind of where I think for me, I really started to think, well, maybe I could do this. So I have made thus far 4 short films, and one of them would have been ShadowFable, and I've been very lucky in getting funding for them. And the 4th one is in post-production at the moment. And I've always written, and I suppose for me, that's always going to be the consistent thing, is to write. And as hard as I find it, and I think anybody here who writes knows that it's really hard to write. Writing is the most difficult thing. And it's the one where your imposter syndrome comes to grab you by the throat. But I just love the collaborative nature of filmmaking, and I hope to continue to be able to do it. And I have been very lucky, I think, in the last couple of years in getting a couple of opportunities. So I have to say my experience has been really positive, and I've met some lovely people. But again, I'm still, as Marjo says, it's, you put a lot of work into this. It's trying to kind of make a living from it is the challenge for every filmmaker. I suppose my question for you is, and for Nadia, I was really impressed, and I hope you don't mind me asking, at the cast, the young cast, and then I was to hear that they are writers. I was wondering what level of experience they had prior to being filmed, and did you workshop it with them? Because I thought they were great. They were really natural performances. And then Vanessa, I totally agree with you about art being what you feel and not necessarily what the story or the narrative. And I thought I got a lot of things out of your film, very personal to me as well, rather, which is interesting, but which were very different to when you explained where it came from, where I was thinking. So yeah, anyway, that's my question to Nadia and Marjo, if that's okay. What was your process with your young actors? Because they were really impressive.
Because the teenagers, they actually were developing the script with me. So they were really inside the story themselves. And then I had very clear roles for them. So each actor had like a special place in this kind of like a special character, because there are 5 different characters. So and only 10 minutes time. So they need to be very clear. So there is one who is very enthusiastic about serial killers, then one who is very scared, and actually she is changing the most, like in the dubbing the film. And then there is one who is acting like a mother in the group, and what else? Yeah, so everybody is a little bit different, and that helped them to act because they are first timers. They have never acted before, and so that's why I think it was very clear for them to they knew what they need to do in each moment and each scene.
Nadia.
So I've been doing theater since like I was in fifth grade. So I'm very into character work, and had a lot of friends who were interested in acting. So I held auditions at the theater I usually went to, and a lot of people were interested. And my assistant director and producer, Ella Britz, she really helped with communicating and the casting process. And so we chose our three actors that had the best chemistry, and I kind of wanted a little kind of awkward chemistry between Anna and Mark. So it wasn't supposed to feel like they were like really into each other, but that there was just something like a little off about it. And I feel like the actor who played Mark did that really great. There was a little conflict about casting Mark because this was his first time kind of taking on a lead role like this. But from the audition, I had a lot of confidence in him because his thing with acting was that he usually got stage fright. But when you're working on set, it's you can have the cast and crew kind of go further, and I was able to work with him more independently on that. And the girls, Grace and Anna, they were really excited to be on camera for the first time. They had acted in like theatrical roles, but it was very easy for them to kind of transition to film style acting. What I really loved doing was giving them kind of character sheets, which is something I would always do as an actor, where you kind of have to make up a whole backstory, like create your family, where you grew up, your middle name, your birthday, and I feel like that really helped them flesh out the character and make it real to them.
And okay, so this was your first film you ever shot, and you did learn things on YouTube and did an incredible job. But what was your experience in the industry? You mentioned acting before. Like, could you just talk me through about, like, things that you have done up until now that maybe led to your ability to do this?
Yeah, so I was acting, and then I kind of started stage managing, and so
And
that
for
kind of
theatre?
for theater, yes. So I kind of learned about like wardrobe and set design, and like playwriting. And so I decided to study film at Wesleyan University, where I'm attending now. And I took a playwriting class, and then I transitioned to more screenwriting, and I served as a production assistant on a film set in Brooklyn. That was my first time kind of being on set and realizing everything that goes into it. So I tried to kind of absorb as much as I could from that. And after experiencing that and what I knew from theater and like what goes into a theatrical production, I tried to apply that to film production. And I think the most important part was kind of organizing everything, like figuring out equipment, wardrobe, locations, and then creating the shot breakdown and getting everything kind of aligned and in stone. But I kind of really felt like there were a lot of barriers to the film industry, and so I didn't necessarily want to direct or shoot the film, but I felt like after what I've learned from film theory in school, I could do my best by researching online because you have all of this accessible on YouTube and on the internet. So I kind of tried to learn everything I could, and that really helped me in the process.
We mentioned sort of our journeys and our professional journeys. And I know, Vanessa, you had sort of like touched on a few things, but I was just like, just to spell it out a little bit about your background. So you're kind of shaping young minds in the National Film School. So everyone who's kind of coming out of our national film schools, so all our future filmmakers are learning under you, and that's why you have the access to the equipment. Just to clarify, if we know here, but just a little bit about sort of your journey again. And I think you're so grounded in both documentary and drama, and a little bit about kind of your key learnings from those, and what would you see your voice maybe as being as a filmmaker? Because I think what's really interesting is how this has done something completely different.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. I'm a lecturer in the National Film School in IET here in Dublin, and actually that came about accidentally, like in about 2006 or 7. A really good producer in the Irish industry, a friend of mine, he needed to take some time off their part-time teaching, lecturing, and asked me would I fill in because I was producing a feature doc at the time in West Africa, in Mali, and or I had just finished it, I think. And I said, yeah. So that was the first time I kind of did any lecturing, and I absolutely loved it because film school lecturing isn't like other kind of teaching or strict scholarly academia, and there's elements of that. But you are just, it's interesting you said the word voice, Gemma, because what you're doing is actually trying to help these really, really, they're like Nadia, they're like wonderkins. They're just like full of genius and expression and creativity. So you can't teach any of that anyway. But what you can do is nurture and bring out the individual's voice. Of course, we teach them camera, sound, editing, all the craft areas. Of course, that's really important. But really, it is about voice. So myself, I studied film and television in college. I worked, on numerous shorts, ads, documentary, drama. Even after the recession, I reinvented myself and worked in formatted television. I've worked in RTE at times. So, I've done a huge variety of jobs. I've freelanced as an archive producer, and I've been all over the world. I've worked on a lot of big award-winning productions. I've met incredible people, from A-listers to, probably shot in most farms in Ireland, or definitely on most boats on the West Coast. So like extraordinary access to life and humanity and amazing adventures. But ultimately, I was just born at the wrong time. No, I'm joking. When I came of age and started making films, there were 1 or 2 women filmmakers in Ireland, literally. There was Pat Murphy, who had made 3 extraordinary films, and then there were some others. There were a tiny, tiny pool, less than 5, and they had all made 1 feature each and disappeared, pretty much. So I didn't really think about it at the time. I didn't think that there was any way that my work was not... I mean, my work was doing well, but I wasn't getting other opportunities for any other reason other than the others' work was better than mine. But then when I would see the finished work, I would go, it's absolutely not. Grant me the confidence of a mediocre white man. So I suppose I'm now at the age where I have no filter. I don't care anymore, and I've nothing to lose anymore. And I've done enough of that. So again, like, it's kind of going back to that space of liberating. I absolutely love lecturing. Like, to leave industry and go into that has also been an incredible transition, because you can take all the wonderful elements, all the brilliant sides of film and industry, and all that I've learned, and I can use that in a really, really positive way.
I'm my similar vintage to Vanessa, and I think
Oh, you're definitely a lot younger than me, Margaret.
I don't know. I think I've benefited hugely from all of the efforts that have gone. I can feel that because I have had the opposite experience in other industries and other walks of life. And I definitely feel that, you know, the landscape has, I mean, there's always work to be done, but I think even the sort of the acknowledgement that you might want to have something other than a life outside of going to set, or
Yeah, very interesting. You talking about being a mother, and here we are. Gemma's extraordinary change maker, multitask. Wears so many hats. She's a brilliant filmmaker in her own right. She's working with Film Ireland. She's now got a film festival, and she has children, among many other things that she does. And you referencing that as well, Margaret. That's so interesting what you said about that you could suddenly network because we were stuck in our own homes as a mum. And again, like I'm not a mother, but it's like there's double exclusion there because of that. But also interesting in the genre things that you touched on, Margaret, as well. It's one thing. I just think like we've been working with women in film and television a long time, fighting for things, but I think that there is a regression going on at the moment as well. Like the numbers and the stats are not getting better. And also interesting in terms of genre, like the genre of filmmaking is more than any other seen as the domain, a very male domain. So you're fighting up against that. And it's just wonderful to see the three of you here and your three incredible films, all, paying homage to all that has come before, but they're all so fresh and new. I really felt it when I was watching. And maybe, Margaret, what you said about daytime, that was so interesting. Like, what a great observation, and maybe that's anyway. I'm not really. I'm just wondering what you think about that. What you all think about that. Are you thinking about that when you're making that? This is seen, and we have to be better. We have to make better films than all of that. Do you feel that?
Global though, statistically in Hollywood. So it's happening here, and in Hollywood it is happening. So there was a push, and Vanessa was on the board of Women in Film and TV Ireland, and there was this push, was it 50-50 by 2020, and like we were making really, really good headway, and then COVID happened, and then there was lots of brilliant women in development, but then when it came time to getting the features, none, crickets. So Maeve McGrath, who was the programmer for Galway Film Fla, has come on here and said 10% of the films that we get, the Irish feature films, are directed by women. Thank God there's more internationally. And she said, I think that was 2 years running. So she's left. So I won't get those interesting stats. But I think someone from the Cork Film Festival, their programmer, went on an interview recently and said something very, very similar in terms of what is being submitted, what is going into production. But I also spoke to female directors, and they were saying, actually, it's a financing issue. And someone said, in terms of the offers that are being made, because, and specifically here in Ireland, it's very difficult to make a film funded only in Ireland because we are so small and the funds are so limited and the pool is so limited that most of what we do is international and co-production, and actually raising the money internationally is the biggest difficulty. And it isn't, it's something that is like, maybe it's just that turn towards conservatism unconsciously in the industry, where it's raising finance, where it's just really, really difficult to raise finance, apparently.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I mean, what's going on politically in the United States, I think has had a massive impact on the media and the commercials, the movies that they're pushing. You see less diversity and less kind of progressive values that they were like really headlining with like 2020 and like the few years before that. So I've definitely noticed that regression as well.
Do you think it's, Nadia, and isn't it interesting that maybe actually a genre like horror, like, what Margaret Atwood did with dystopian fiction, like really they're feminist texts. And
Mhm.
it's interesting, like maybe do you think that like actually rather than say, straight drama, that maybe genre or horror or, psychological, maybe the place where we can actually make bigger impacts narratively or message wise. Do you think that's possible? Not where maybe certain people won't understand.
Yeah, I mean,
The ones we don't need, who were censoring, for
yeah,
example.
I think even since like 70s, 80s horrors, slasher films, I think women have always held a more prominent role in those kind of storylines and narratives. And horror has always been a kind of pervasive genre where women's voices and minority voices can be heard in different ways and kind of use fear and like sci-fi dystopian genres, kind of the weird and the absurd to kind of actually help representation.
Yeah, and because traditionally maybe as well, going way back, women were just killed. And like everything you turn on in Netflix, a woman dies within the first 3 minutes. And I'm literally just looking for things where women aren't killed and murdered all the time.
Mm.
But having said that, most of those projects are not authored by women. So, but it's really interesting that you say that, and I think there's a truth to that for sure. And that, we can use all those traditions and tropes in our favor for sure.
Definitely.
I want to get back to everybody's films in terms of what it was like, the process of making it. And probably the most, and like getting the resources together and if anything surprising came up on the shoot. So I'm going to go around and ask everybody that question, but I'm just really interested to what it looks like on an experimental short and about accessing that kind of body feeling and that connection between like how, like what is that process like?
Yeah, again, it's really freeing and liberating. Like, things kind of, gestation me. So, like, I've never made a film, and even though this film was made really in a week, and the shoot was just one day, and it was edited that night for the following day. So we all stayed kind of up, and all the films were edited together as one collective conscious breathing thing. There was 6 of us, all women, weirdly. So the process, I mean, I was going to say my answer would be really short, but I never have really short answers to anything. But at the same time, you know, I started to have a feeling that blue was going to be central in the film, the color blue. So I started looking around my landscape, and they delivered water to the hotel room in these kind of gavelled blue bottles, and they had kind of imprints on them. So I started shooting through the bottle, and then things started to appear like lungs breathing, and so I experimented. I mean, that's what experimental filmmaking is. But what I was doing was breaking down the image. So, so if everything is pretty and beautiful and in focus, well, what is the opposite of that? And why is it important that images be beautiful? And what look like if you don't do that? I also shot through a glass straw. So I shot right down the entire barrel of a glass straw. So I've worked on, the White Dress, the short film I made, like the lenses were worth 200,000 euro. The camera was worth, 50 quid by comparison, but the lenses. So I was thinking, well, what about if I just use my iPhone and like use a glass straw like as a lens? Like, do you really need, the democratization of filmmaking and the breaking down of the image and the breaking down of sound, and everything in it had meaning for me. Everything had about, so it, the straw was about replacing the Arri Alexa with my phone. The straw was replacing the prime lenses. So like it may look like to someone it could just look like a bunch of madness, and it is that too. But I think all filmmaking is kind of a madness. So then the making of it was the clips, the scenes, going around Berlin, filming, recording loads of sound. And in the end, the sound is just, I record birds incessantly. I have done for years. I'm obsessed. I became a bird watcher in lockdown. Other people making sourdough. I started watching birds. So I recorded birds, but I played it back at a slow speed. The birds were going crazy one evening in the trees. They're having the turf wars, and I recorded that for a period of time. And when I edited the whole film mute, and I thought it was going to be a silent film. So I placed the sound, I just reduced the speed to as much as I could, put it in the timeline. And this is where divine accidents and serendipity and the unconscious and the subconscious and all of those things are so important, is that when I placed it in the timeline, it was exactly the length of the film. To almost a second. Like, how could that be? How could one random recording of thousands that I have, put it in, play it at half speed, and it just fit exactly, and it became this, this kind of like calling the horror side of it. So that was the complete soundtrack. I mean, it couldn't be more broken down and simple. So it was just putting all the scenes together, pulling off the phone, out of my own little archive, things that were important about the breaking down of me as a filmmaker and the new beginning and the new rebirth. And just that it's Imbolg is the festival is so important to me. Bridget is my woman, has been for most of my life. I go to Kildare on the 1st of February. I go to her church. I go to her well. I leave out a cloth every year on the eve of Imbolg, and I give pieces of it to all the women. And I'm going to have pieces for all of you at the festival. But so rebirth, total rebirth as a filmmaker is it? And yeah, so of course my answer wasn't short.
It's lovely though. It's really, really gorgeous. Okay, so I'm going to go around, and then it's like, yes, anything that came up for you during the making of the film. What was the bit about it? Again, maybe it's staying on tone of this that meant the most to you. I think that's a really lovely thing to bring out. Mario.
So I already told you that it was a very difficult process, since we didn't have any money, and I was doing a lot alone, and I was doing wardrobe, and I was like searching all the shooting places. So basically I was doing everything possible things, and also in the actual shootings also. So it was difficult, the process, chaotic, very chaotic. But it also kind of the time there, and all the struggles, all the problems, what we had there, also kind of gave me time to think about the story. So basically, because I told you that like we developed this story together with these teenagers. So this story was developed in 2 weeks time, and then we went to shoot right away. And of course, like it changed during the time, and because we did it without money, so then we could also take as much time as we could. So I kind of came up like for example, this first they were supposed to be only on the beach. Whole stories was supposed to be there, but then I kind of developed, because I knew that like we can't, like with the material we have on the beach, we can't tell the story. So I needed to develop the story developed on the way. So, and it got deeper also. Well, this is the production side, and but yeah, there is always, especially if you make this kind of project. So all the what happens in the production affects in the story, and yeah, kind of like luckily because it got deeper.
And Margaret, what meant the most to you during your shoot? What did you take away from it?
That's a really good question. The location was very important to me because it's kind of up the road from me, and it's kind of historically very significant, even though it's quite hidden. And the actual there's a number of different graveyards there, but it's a mixed graveyard in that it's both Protestant and Catholic, which was very unusual. And it covers the span from the famine, right into the early 19th century, and then it became sort of disused. And the Kildare Heritage have kind of are taking care of it. But we were able to get onto it. We got permission from them. We got permission from the farmer whose land it was on. It's a beautiful spot. But I think for me, the main takeaway was, when you're learning as a filmmaker, you're always trying, it's a mistake that I think I make all the time. And I think it's something all creatives do, where because we live in a world obsessed with outcome, we're always trying to get everything right. So we're obsessed with getting things right. And it was just a chance to sort of let go, because I had no dialogue and I didn't have to worry about sound. And it was really freeing. And we shot in a day. There was Dave C. Lynch was my cinematographer. He was fantastic. He's a gent. He was trying out his new camera, so it was a new one for him. It was him getting a chance to try his new camera out. I'd Mick Behan as my he was his camera operator in first aid year, whatever else. General dog, God love me, had everything to do. And it was just really nice. It was just a really relaxed kind of day. And Fanula was brilliant. She had the hardest work to do that day. The poor child had to run around graveyard and up and down a laneway all day long. I just made her run all day. And yeah, that was a big takeaway for me, is less is more, and to try and go with your instinct a little bit more, and let it be, let it learn, it's either going to work or it isn't, and not to overthink it or overdo it. Especially, I think, I see it myself in other walks of life, and again, this is a sweeping generalization, I do apologize for it, but women do put the prep in. We do worry about getting things right, and we don't sometimes let ourselves just turn up and try something. And yeah, I think that was a really big takeaway for me.
And finally, Nadia.
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things about this production was having a cast and crew that kind of put their faith in me without having a lot of film experience and prior production knowledge. Like, we didn't know where this project would go or how it would end up, but they kind of trusted me in the process. And so we had a very small budget and kind of just used what we had lying around. I think we spent most just on the wireless lavalier mics. And we had two scenes where one was sunrise and one was sunset. So we were kind of fighting the sun, and those were really difficult. And I'm not sure how I got everyone to wake up for the sunrise scene. And then the sunset scene was the end monologue, so that was difficult for Leighton, who plays Mark, because we had to get a 2-page monologue, and I wanted to do only like 1 or 2 takes, so there wouldn't be like multiple cuts. But the sun just kept going down, so we're racing against that. But I also did the post-production, so I learned Premiere Pro editing, and so that took like 3 months to kind of learn how to color grade and audio mix. But it was really exciting working with a musician at my school to create an original score, and then seeing it all come together, and what was made out of everyone's hard work was just really satisfying.
I could talk to you guys for another hour, but I will not. I will let you have your time back. And thank you so much. And I cannot wait to watch your films on a bigger screen with an audience.
Thank you so much, Gemma.
Well, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for listening. So these films will be screening on the 30th to the 31st at Griffith College Dublin. And to get your tickets or to follow on socials, just search Imbolg Film Festival.